All right. I am here with Jonathan Bennett, and he is an advisor at Clearly Then. How's it going, Jonathan?
It's gone really good, Steve. Nice to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into this kind of tactical episode. But before we get there, let's talk about your background. How did you get started?
Sure, I've had a kind of an interesting and winding career. I came out of kind of corporate communications. I ended up on the senior team of a huge hospital here in Canada where I live, and spent a bunch of years on the senior team there, on the C-suite. I bravely, foolishly, I don't know, I quit and I started a management consulting company, which I grew for the next 10 years, became a B Corp, and was able to orchestrate a management buyout. And so one of my colleagues bought the company from me. And these days I'm an advisor. I help founders and CEOs and all kinds of folks with their toughest leadership problems.
Nice, very nice. And I think this is a unique episode because when you're advising leaders, there's a lot of good knowledge nuggets that I'm sure that you have. And I did a bunch of research before this around like some of the typical sort of advice that leadership gets. But I'd love to start with some of the sort of overlooked challenges that leaders have that you could share some advice around and things that you've seen that are sort of common character traits.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is such a deeply personal journey. And when it comes to building a company and scaling it and getting it ready for sale, these are essentially, like I always say, the easy part is the money and the finances and the legal stuff and the accounting stuff. And there's lots of experts out there that can help with that. The hard stuff is the emotional journey that you go on. Like whether you've bought a company or founded it and bootstrapped it, or whether you've had it funded and grown it, it's all a part of who you are as a person. It's an act of self-expression, and it becomes a part of you. You live it, you breathe it, you worry about it at 2 a.m. It becomes everything about you. And so the idea of at some point walking away from it, even if you have been hoping for that payday one day, even if this is what you've been working so hard towards, doesn't mean it's easy. And I think that that is the most overlooked aspect of growing and exiting a business, is the emotional toil and the emotional journey. Many people that I've worked with, what I really see is a kind of grief that happens, and it's a kind of letting go and a sort of an acceptance process that go on. You kind of ride the old Kubler-Ross curve, of grief, and I just think that it's not something that folks are really prepared for, but boy, do they ever experience it once it's upon them.
Yeah, agreed. And that's a good sort of segue into timing. I think when it comes to be the right time for people, what are things that you see where, whether it's burnout or, the time to sell a business is different for everybody. Like that's just
Yep.
common knowledge. But I'm curious what you've seen when it comes to people that are preparing emotionally, specifically for the time to sell.
Yeah, what a great question. I'm a fan of getting off the stage while the crowd is still clapping. I think that you're never negotiating from a position of strength if you're burned out, exhausted, fed up, done. If you've still got more runway left, if you've still got more to give, if there's still something left there to contribute, that to me is a good signal that you're maybe getting ready. And if you're starting to imagine and daydream of what might be next for you, whether that's retirement or whether that's starting a new business or whether that's going back and working for somebody else, whatever the set of circumstances may be for you, I think the thing that I'm always looking for is like, don't run out the clock all the way till the end. It creates a kind of an extra set of pressures on you, and you are then forced to negotiate from a position of depletion, emotional depletion, maybe even financial depletion, and hanging on is rarely the right thing to do. That said, boxers and politicians, right? They don't know when to quit. And it can be true for entrepreneurs as well. It can feel like there's always one more sale. There's always that next thing to get. And, when I just, then I'll, And it's that kind of mindset, unfortunately, that allows people to stay longer. And, in many businesses, often the best folks to buy them are the folks that work for you. And, whether it's an employee sale or whether it's a management buyout, if you stay on too long, your very best people will eventually get sick of waiting and leave. And that is a heartbreaker when they do, because you've trained up somebody, they're all ready to go, and stubbornly, inexcusably, you've waited too long for your own private reasons, and your best sales just walked out the door. So it's sad when I see those kinds of things happen, but unfortunately all too common. So that's where I'd really go.
Yeah. And that was actually like kind of answering my next thought was around the evaluation of the successor, like who you want to take the business to the next level. How have you seen people evaluate that? Obviously, we just literally talked about people who work for you, people in the company are often really powerful leaders to take it to the next level, and sort of the downfall of not doing it soon enough. But I'm curious as to some things that you've seen with leaders out there, how they evaluate buyers and the sort of successor of the business.
It really does depend on what's primarily motivating you at that moment around your sale. For many people, money is a huge piece of it, and price obviously has a lot to do with it. But the payday can be fleeting, and the obligations around the payday can be all the way from fabulous to brutal. There's lots of sales that happen that come with stapling your foot to the floor for the next 2 years, and that can be the most unpleasant 2 years of an owner's life, previous owner's life. They have all the relationships. They don't get the back end of their payout unless everything goes swimmingly, but they have no power. The new owners start to change things in their minds. They're wrecking what I built, which may even be true, and it's happening right under them. Meanwhile, those existing relationships, suppliers, employees, customers, etc., remain with that original owner, and they wonder why things are changing, and there's this sense of promises that are not being kept. So these are complicated decisions, and they're ones that I would argue must not solely be about the money. Digging in and understanding what's most important for you, and what's going to be in alignment with your values and in alignment with the promises that you've made, for sure, to your employees, but also to your customers and your suppliers, to the whole kind of ecosystem of your business. What's in the best interest of those things? There's a kind of, obviously it's kind of fiduciary duty, right? Like to how you're showing up in the world. And so if you do something that's very self-interested, the chances of it coming back to bite you are pretty good. And it's really around balancing all of those things, and being able to sort of clearly and fairly communicate the rationale around why you're doing what you're doing with regards to the sale. It can also be true that despite your best efforts, maybe there's nobody inside the company that's an appropriate next owner. Maybe they can't afford it. Maybe you can't afford to sell it to them through some sort of buyback scheme. And so it could be that you do need an external owner, and that means big change. It means big change for the organization, for the company. Maybe it's a roll up. Who knows what the circumstances are, but it could really be quite jarring for the existing employees and folks, because there's inevitably going to be change. And a question I often get asked, and maybe I'll just quickly go there, is what's a common pitfall that owners make when they're exiting? And to my mind, it's making promises that they're not going to be around to keep. And what it feels expedient, but it's like, well, the new owners, they promise they love the business, they're not going to change anything, and you've got the current owners saying that to the employees, and that's really a promise that they can't keep. They have no idea what the new owner is going to do, and a more honest thing is like, here's what they've said, but I can't promise you that won't happen. What I would encourage you to do is, show up and do your best work and all the sorts of good leadership things that you would hope an owner would say. But try not to make promises you can't keep, because we all know that we all run companies differently, and we all have different, needs and pressures. And, you just see companies, especially if private equity comes in, what they're going to do to a company versus what, a roll-up may do inside a larger but aligned company. Like, they're completely different experiences. And just trying to be as honest as you can with the folks around you would be my best advice.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Promises you can't keep, to stay away from, because that was kind of my favorite topic, is mistakes like that you've seen. But I think in your own exit, let's talk about that a little bit. What were some of the things that were unexpected? What were some mistakes that popped up that you can share about your own experience?
Yeah, I happily had a really lovely experience. It was exceptionally good. It happened. I don't mind sharing it. The company's still growing and doing amazing things today. I just haven't been involved in it for the last sort of 3.5 years, which is when I sold it. I had a really wonderful sort of young woman that was coming up through the ranks at the company. She was showing so much talent, and I was on holidays with my wife, and we were in Dublin, Ireland. And I remember walking down the street, and we were just, when you're on vacation, you get kind of philosophical, and we were sort of doing that with one another. We were talking about our life and everything else. And I sort of said, I'm kind of thinking that I might be getting kind of closer to the end than not, And, she just looked at me and she said, well, you better get a plan, because you can't just give 2 weeks notice. Like, you can't just quit your own company. And that was the first moment where I was like, oh, like, what is my plan? And evidently my plan was, was this employee that was now kind of, a vice president and kind of senior in the company. I realized she was it. And then I thought, oh my God, like, the chances of her getting pinched by one of our clients is pretty good. Like, she's really talented. She's in front of people all the time. Somebody's going to come along and offer her a job, and I'm not going to be able to do anything to keep her. So, if she's my succession plan, I better speed this up. So before I was ready, and really before she was ready, we moved into talks about what it could look like. And what she needed and wanted was a chance to try it on, to feel comfortable that she could in fact lead the company, that the clients wouldn't all leave, that the staff and employees would line up underneath her. And so I stepped down as CEO, even though I still owned it, and she stepped up. And it was a fascinating experience in psychology, human psychology, and everything else. As the folks around the company understood that she was now the boss, and it's amazing how people know where their bread is buttered. Like, I could barely get a meeting, and I still owned the place. Like, everyone knew where it was going. And so I quickly, it was very humbling. But I quickly sort of understood, oh, wow, like, the power just shifted. She now is running the place. I just went back into the trenches and started leading work. It was a management consulting company. So I just started leading projects again, which I had not been doing in quite some time. So, I was more than done when we actually finalized the transaction. And she had been running the company, by that point for over a year. So it was a smooth transition. And I think I'd like to say that, we really planned it out and totally knew what we were doing. Some of it we was making up as we were going, for sure. But in hindsight, that really worked in that set of circumstances really well.
Yeah. And those circumstances specifically of a gradual sort of migration of leadership is really unique. I mean, a lot of the conversations that I have are hard cutovers, where it's just one day you're leading, and then the next day it's just you're waking up. You're waking up, and there's nothing to lead. There's numbers in the bank account, but there's nothing to lead, and then there's others in charge. So that's a unique situation, and really, I like to hear stories like that where it's smooth. The team feels taken care of. There's not like an abrupt, all of a sudden strategy shift. It's like a gradual move, which is really smart. And I think emotionally, it's not something that we talk about a lot. A lot of people just talk about the headline, like, all right, you sold for this much. And I think emotionally, a lot of things come up for people when there's just a hard stop, depending on a lot of factors. But chapter of life that you're in, the amount of time you spent building it, if it was 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, just the abrupt stop. A lot of people don't talk about that because it's just not really normal. It's a fringe feeling to have that abrupt stop. And I think there's a lot of planning that goes into that can prevent just some wreckage afterwards. But in
Totally.
experience that you've seen with leaders and that abrupt stop, what are some things that they've done around, continuing on? Was it mentorship? Was it kind of doing similar to what you're doing, where you're like advising people? What is it that you've seen work to help people?
Yeah, I mean, most entrepreneurs are pretty driven people, and the idea of just waking up the next day and just saying, I'm done, I'm checking out, it seems very, like the thing that you would want. But very few people are good at doing that.
Yeah.
It's not their personality types. So how do you keep busy? How do you continue to create value, but in a new and different way that provides you with the kind of, just sort of, life spark that you know that you have. And after all, you've earned all this, like wisdom, hard fought often through a ton of mistakes. So for me, it was about sitting on advisory boards, about doing advisory work, like I do one-on-one work with CEOs and founders that are kind of where I was at maybe 10 years ago, and I can see the path that's ahead of them. And so I can be really useful tactically, but I can also use lots of coaching tools and help them to increase their self-awareness as leaders. But I also establish advisory boards. So I sit on a couple of advisory boards, and I bring other leaders like me around the table. And we I think of it like scaffolding. When companies are going through fast growth, and or through hard times, like whatever they're doing, having some senior folks around you that are in it for the long haul and that provide you accountability, but not having the burden of a formal board of directors, but having a board that you treat like that. They just don't have that level of accountability. You've got smart people with great Rolodexes who can ask really hard questions, who you don't have to bring up to speed like a consultant every time. So, we're sort of there in a consistent, episodic way. And I think that they're great ways that you can continue to get paid, continue to contribute, really get to know another company in a deep, meaningful way, and see the results of your efforts over the long time. So they all seem like good things to do. And and some people also now they have dough and they want to do that and invest in these companies. So that's another piece of it, of course, as well.
Yeah, that's smart. I know that there's a lot of these sort of communities that have popped up over the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a lot of them, but I think it's such a unique problem to solve, where you're in a space where there's such kind of complex problems that not everybody understands and can relate to in a leadership position, especially of like a high-speed VC-backed startup, let's say. There's communities out there now, and like you're describing, that have really touched on this, where mentorship and a sense of community around people that are like-minded, and like a board, kind of what you're saying, a little less structured of a lot of these concepts, but it is powerful. I'm a firm believer in mentors. I've had them for many years, and think that just having someone to talk to as a sounding board while you're in the trenches of a deal, when you can't share anything with anybody else, it's truly like worth its weight in gold. I mean, it's a very important mental exercise to have that there.
Yeah, it's really isolating, and especially if you're doing it for the first time. So like I suppose like the work I do looks a lot like coaching. Like it looks a lot like executive coaching or business coaching. But the reason I call myself an advisor is because I'm more often than not, like I hold a lot of space and people say all the feelings, and I'm good at the emotional intelligence stuff. But I also spend a lot of time gaming out strategies. And so like that's because I've done similar things before, and or I've seen other clients do it. And so they're the things that you need when you're there and you've just never seen this before. Like you can spend as much time as you want searching your soul, but if the answer isn't inside because you just haven't seen it before, then that's sort of like not the right tool, right, for the job. So that's kind of why I'm like a bit of a fan of bringing both into the relationship.
Totally. I love it because just talking about it or being able to talk about a deal or strategies to anybody is immensely powerful for people. So before we get to the finale question, I want to talk about negotiations. I think this is something that gets brought to me often. People ask questions about it, but I'd love to get your kind of hot take on negotiations when it comes to a buyer, whatever business, is a common one that you've seen, like a SaaS business or a tech business. What are some tactics that you've seen kind of work and that you like?
Show up and do a lot of listening, and keep the proverbial powder dry. Really, because what you're trying to do is understand what the needs of the other person is, and by that I mean the human needs, not the financial needs of the business needs, but the actual human needs. And that's really their why. And it might not be the presenting thing that they say. That might be 2 layers under. And once you can figure out how to meet their needs, that's when you can figure out how to structure the thing that you're trying to put in front of them that's going to be really meaningful. You can see that, you go into negotiations sometimes and you think, like, what are they doing? Like, I mean, anybody that's bought and sold a house, you play this like mental game of like, what is motivating them? Why wouldn't they accept this price? It was full offer, or why wouldn't they? Like, just there's a million permutations of it. And really what's happening is that you can't see and you don't yet understand or know what's going to meet their needs. And like, buying a house, you'll never figure it out because of the way the system is set up, at least in this country. Whereas a business, it's far more intimate. There's lots of conversations, there's lots of pre-negotiations, there's a sort of dating phase where, we start to share information and all that sort of stuff. And without prejudice, we get to know. And that's where we're evaluating one another. But the thing that I'm most interested in, whether it's the sale of business or it's just doing business, is really trying to understand, like, how is this going to meet your needs as a human? And how is this going to get you to want to commit and be a really good partner in whatever negotiation this is? And so they're the things that I'm always mostly looking for.
Nice. So that takes us to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Jonathan 10 years ago?
Just plant lots and lots of seeds, because you can't tell when they're going to germinate and where they're going to lead. Like, there's just never too many seeds. So just like keep building relationships, keep doing good things in the world, because like good things eventually come if you do enough of it, and there's an abundance of it. So I think that would be the pep talk I would give myself.
Nice. Well said. So what are you working on now, and where can people learn more about Clearly Then?
Yeah. And so, these days I sit on a bunch of advisory boards and boards. I do one-on-one executive coaching / advisory work. If you're interested in hearing how I do my work, I have a 6-episode private podcast where you can eavesdrop in on real life calls of me doing sessions with real leaders who agreed to allow themselves to be vulnerable and be taped. And I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can download that and give that a listen. And feel free to reach out if any of that resonates with you.
Very cool. That's great. Like an eavesdrop of conversations. I love that. Private podcast. Very smart. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the link that Jonathan mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve.